at Projectkin's Sunday afternoon in the live stream. I kind of like that. I'm sort of going with a, grand rock kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. We have to have a term for everything, like Sunday afternoon in the live stream. Hi, Barbara. Great to see you.
Hi,
I
Kathy
don't know what
Stone.
it's like in California. I hope you're all safe. My heart goes out to everyone
I know.
affected by the fires in California. Having us live through that this summer with in Alberta, it breaks my heart to see. But we are freezing here in Calgary today. It's quite chilly. Finally got our cold weather, but hopefully it'll go away in a couple days. But it's good to see you.
Yeah, well, it's good to see so many of you joining here, joining us live. That's kind of fun across the country, across the border. As we put this together, I heard just checking the news because it's kind of a big news day between today and tomorrow. But there's another big wind event. Speaking of the fires in Southern California,
Hmm.
for all of you, hello, hello, Australia, New Zealand chiming in. Um, for all of you, I think that's something that certainly Australia, Canada, and the West
Hmm.
Coast of the United States all certainly share is this experience with these wildfires. And as you know, we get fire season. It is a season. Ironically, in California, at least to my understanding, to the extent that it's even possible, there's sort of earthquake season too. Maybe that's just an old wives' tale, but we had our Loma Prieta earthquake in October 20th,
Hmm.
no, October 17th, 1989. And 2 years later, almost to the day, we had our Oakland Hills fire in
Hmm.
1991, October 20th. And it just, yeah, I had just had a baby. So it kind of stuck with me as one of those things that makes me so anxious.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So one of the things I want to try to make sure that we hit early in this live stream is my promise, my get why we're here, is to make sure that we have a place where we come together as a little community and talk to each other and share a little bit about what's ahead. This is a busy week here in the US, as many, I'm
Hmm.
sure the whole planet knows. We had an election and we have an inauguration on the 20th of the month, whenever that happens to fall. The January after the election. So that makes it tomorrow. And it's freezing cold. There is a polar vortex sliding through the middle of the country. And I see you, Cynthia, thinking of you, not to mention Calgary, but come on, you guys, you're good at this. And at the same time, we have, a lot of stuff going on, this whole TikTok thing. And actually, I think there's a connection between that and the fires, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. First, I want to circle back to the week ahead. So it's a fun week. It is, of course, our Kathy Stone week. Kathy Stone, as all I think of you who are joining us now know, Kathy Stone is something of the cornerstone of Projectkin. And I like to say that because in many ways, Projectkin started, or actually Kathy's Corner started before Projectkin did.
Hmm.
And I was a co-founder in a startup called Ponga. And Kathy was a longtime loyal subscriber and member, or whatever we called it, of Ponga, and would join in with these incredible insights about preservation, archiving, handling, scanning, dealing with your photos. And we sort of knocked on the door and said, "Hey, Kathy, would you share some of what you're doing for the larger community?" And for a bunch of reasons, we couldn't start yet, but we decided to start in April 2023. And we actually knew we were going to be closing down the service. So we scheduled that to happen a week after Kathy's Corner, because doggone it, we promised. And
I feel better now that my session didn't kill Ponga.
no, it most certainly did not. And in fact, we discovered along the way that for the events that we had people showing up to the events who were no longer subscribers. We had people who would tell each other about the events when they weren't telling each other about the software or whatever else. There was this disconnect between the two. They were adjacent and important, but not necessarily related. And frankly, that experience with a platform has taught me a great deal. And, there was something really special, personal about that community. And that's what eventually became Project Kin. We started out with a little in between zone of postponga.com, believe it or not. But that's a little tidbit of history we all insiders can know. Yes. As Robin Stewart says, Kathy Stone is amazing. She is to have stuck through all of this. Because when we're talking about our family history, our stories, for so many of us, it begins with maybe it's a cigar box, maybe it's a couple of cases of tubs of photos if you're lucky, and documents, and you start really understanding where you come from. You understand who your people are, you understand what your connection is to history. And for so many of us, that begins with those artifacts. And that's where, Kathy, you have always been able to tell us. But before we go into more of that, I
Mhm.
want to talk about what's happening on Tuesday. So, Monday, again, major historic event happening in the US. Tuesday is the fourth of our series of um, Forget Me Not, which is this remarkable series with our very special guest, uh, Jane Hutchin, who has really, we started a conversation along the way as Project Kin, and she kept talking about orders of service and memorials and how we remember people at that stage in life. And all of us have have been touched by the passing of loved ones. And for many of us, it is our parents that we've lost, people very close to us, and it brings to mind things that you never really thought about. We try to put out of our heads, thinking about memorials and the people that we've lost and how we tell their stories. Remember my name. Who will remember my stories? It just sends tingles down my spine to think about. Jane has thought very deeply about this and putting together this series. All three of the first episodes are online at projectkin.org/forgetmenot. And as will this next in the series, which is scheduled in our Pacific timeline with a very special guest, Rhonda Lauritsen. Rhonda is a very well known, not only speaker and memoirist with a new memoir of her own called, I believe, Berlin Child, but it's also an extraordinary coach to writers working on their own memoirs under the name Evalog Life. So I'd encourage you to take a look at projectkin.org/events to see what the coming events are
Mhm.
and sign up for that one. Jane's program will be in our Pacific timeline at 4 p.m. Pacific time, which is the morning in Australia, the evening in the East Coast, and the later evening in Europe. Kathy's Corner, meanwhile, is at 3 p.m., just an hour earlier from all of that, because it's 4 o'clock in Calgary. That's why. It seemed to make sense, which is why this is at 2 o'clock, I guess. So we're hacking the timeline. So coming back, Kathy, did you want to talk
Mhm.
a little bit about what you're looking forward to in what you're planning for Thursday's program?
Well, I think we talked a bit at the end of 2025, and we started off Kathy's Corner with I think we started off with the 8 steps to organizing your photos, and then last year we kind of went into those more in depth with each of the steps and talked about a lot of stuff. But I think we'll kick off 2025 with that pile or box that you set aside as you were organizing things of the things that you don't know, who these people are, what this is a photo of, that hopefully you didn't just toss in the garbage, but that it's still, I have a pile of them and it's sort of like, I need to figure out what these photos are. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And it's tied into telling your story because we're going to look at the who, the what, the where, when, why, and dive deeper into photos. I'm going to kick it off though with a little bit of a different approach. I had been going to go through, well, let's talk about why, let's talk about when as sessions, but then I thought, you know what? Let's talk more about using a funnel approach. What kind of things can we look at for a bunch of photos and narrowing it down and then deep dive on those individual photos? And I think just a tip of what's to come, I think Barbara has some good examples, and I've got a couple of good examples of deep dives into photos that the more and more detail we look at reveals the story. And sometimes those unknown photos turn out to be some of the treasures. So I think if you haven't followed Kathy's Corner before, no problem. Join us now. You might want to read through the 8 steps, but I think you'll find the discussion we have over the next few months quite useful as well.
Yeah. All of the past episodes, which again, our very first program, go back to April 2023, which is ironically before Projectkin even existed. And they are at projectkin.org slash Kathy's hyphen corner. We try to make these really easy. And I'm not typing that now because it's sort of hard to do while I'm talking to you. As I know it is hard for all of you to drop in there with chat. We'll figure this thing out. I think at some point Substack's going to figure out how to let you chat on a keyboard before pasting this in. Also, none of this chat is going to be picked up in the recording. So feel free to drop questions in there and we will follow up to repeat your
Mhm.
question if we can remember that long enough, and then join back in. But I love that idea, Kathy. I guess I don't know if this was in your mind. I see Lori Olson White has just joined
Mhm.
us. There was a wonderful one of you will remember. Maybe it's you, Robin, is part of our your stack chat cohort. Somebody was sharing questions about mystery photos and identifying details in the photo and surprises. I remember replying with a photo that I used for Project Kin, or rather for Ponga, because it was compelling. I've called a Harger family picnic, and to me, that was like my gateway drug to genealogy, because it really had me looking into it right down to wait a minute, who is
Mhm.
the photographer here? Oh, and it was Shaw who answered with the reply that had his example of the photos that were found in the drawer. Somebody help me out with his properly first name and link there. That
Uh,
he had found in a drawer in the den, the classic den. I'm reminded of digging in my stepdad's
mhm.
office drawers in his den. Den has always sounded like such a den of, you know. Yeah, David Shaw. Thank you
David
so
Shaw,
much.
and trying to think of the handle on Substack. It'll come to me.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, the neat
Not
thing
coming
about
quickly, but it's brilliant.
that's okay. Neat thing about Substack is that you can start with a few things and fake it. In other words, you can find if generally within posts, it's pretty easy to find the text. Text that was shared as notes, curiously, is a lot harder. It's always good to keep that in mind. But that's always a fun one. So, the mysteries in photos, I'm
Mhm.
reminded of, well, coming back to the loss and the loss and the fires down in Southern
Mhm.
California, and this next event tomorrow, anticipated tomorrow. What happens with these, if you haven't seen enough in the news, is that along the inner coast, it gets warm, and then as that hot air gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and the winds, it creates a differential that drives this wind that goes from offshore winds. It comes from the hot space and goes to the very cold ocean, because our ocean out here in the Pacific is very, very cold up here in the north. And uh there's another whole wind event coming there. So, in thinking about the loss and those kinds of photos, you've been through so many of those in up in Calgary. What are things that we can be doing to be protecting things now?
Well, I think it comes back to, and it's hard right now. It's sad to be doing this when people are in the midst of it. It's kind of, you don't, this isn't what you're thinking about, but it comes back to what we're doing at Project Kin and in our all of our genealogy community is we need to take it's important to find the time. It's always like,
Yeah.
"That's something I'm gonna do later," but it's
Yeah.
so important to find the time to preserve our photos, stories, the memorabilia, all those things that can be lost because in a disaster, you can't take that all with you. I think I told the story. We had bad fires, I think last summer in part of, well, all over Alberta, but part of British Columbia. And a friend of mine has a cabin, and they were in the middle of moving from Calgary to the Vancouver area. So they had emptied the house for staging and had all their stuff at their cabin, which is a home they live in much in the summer. And they were being evacuated, and my friend is a traditional scrapbooker, and she had all the albums she's made over the last years. And she said, when the three adults and the two cats got evacuated, she said, we grabbed clothes, the important papers, and she said, I grabbed the two kids' baby books and our wedding album, and I had to leave the rest because you could only fit so many with kennels and things in the car. They had no idea where they were going, if they were going to have to drive all the way back. And we had 15 minutes to get on the ferry that would take them to the highway to get out of the fire area. And she said, you don't have time. Like you think you will. You think, oh, well, I'd grab all my things and I'd grab this. But in reality, you don't because you don't have
Yeah.
time. So that's where the documenting and working hard on our archives is so important.
Yeah. Actually, it was another discussion that circulated on Substack with pieces that I think it was Denise Allen circulated. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that, or we'll paste the link into the recording. All about things you can do to prepare. In fact, I put the hard
Yeah.
copy, I printed it. I don't do this very often, but I printed it. I found a copy, then I found another document here from our local county with things you can do. It reminds me of, I don't know why this stuck in my head. It was you, Kathy, who, were talking about, well, I have this big pile, which by the way has thinned a little bit, had this big pile of stuff. And that's what gets passed down is a pile of stuff. But our job is to turn that pile of stuff into meaningful stories. And um then you have curated the important things, you have digitized, you have found the right things, and you'll never be done. So relax about that. You just won't. But you're going to do the most important things first. And oh, yeah, somewhere I've got my 2 terabyte drive, and,
Mhm.
I don't
That
have
you can
everything,
grab.
but I, visited with my in laws and I went crazy scanning. They're in their mid 90s, scanning their photo albums just with my phone, and a I brought my shot box and went crazy through their photo
Mhm.
albums because it's not perfect. It's not very, very good,
Yep.
but it's something
Done.
that we can discuss it with them now when they're
And
totally sharp, and
yeah.
make those stories and make those connections and let that trigger the important conversations. Wow.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. One
Busy week.
last yeah, one last little coda here that I thought about was here in the US, we were very anxious about losing TikTok. TikTok has created what a great example of storytelling forms that aren't necessarily narrative. And I see you on here, Cynthia, one of our TikTokers among us, just posted. I saw your post from, I think, last night with the, well, I guess this is goodbye message, and then it turns out maybe not.
Uh,
But that whole exercise is a reminder why it's so important to find ways to back things up. You know, your own TikToks may not seem that important, but they are a really important part of where we are right now, what's happening right now,
mhm.
and that becomes part of the zeitgeist, that becomes part of the story of all the things that are happening here. I'm reminded of Kate Mosley's posts actually here on Substack as well, talking about a new way she's going to be handling her Substack going forward, I think it's each week, with posts about essentially daily observations.
Mm,
And while observations feels more on the edge of meditation than it does storytelling, you know, that kind of deep observation becomes the kind of thing that becomes so compelling about a story. It's what makes these things so interesting as we dive in and look. And maybe we're talking about 100 years ago and not yesterday. But when you think about what you noticed yesterday, it might make you think
Mhm.
about what to look for 100 years ago, including the polar vortex
Mm,
or
yes.
the windstorms.
Well, and it's I think, Barbara, too, I think that's such a good point because it's all we where we have to be so careful about where we keep once we've done the work. And I say done in the loose sense because our favorite thing is done is better than perfect. And I'm working very hard on adapting that I need to get all the photos safely, securely stored somewhere without worrying about whether they've been edited or what more I could do or if I should rescan them, that they need to get up there and get the stories. And I think that's what we're seeing is so important as I know you post about waving goodbye to some of Meta's platforms. And it's so, I know so many people who are storing their day-to-day lives on those platforms. And those could, as we've seen with TikTok this week, those could easily be taken away. We
Exactly.
we we don't pay for them. We don't um, the owner, well, doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't owe us to give us a big heads up. Oh, by the way, I'm taking the platform down, or by the way, I'm cleaning up. We have too much server use, so I'm going to wipe out a bunch of your photos, which I think they already do because I know people have gone. I could have sworn I had shared that on Facebook and it's gone. And so we're
Mhm.
already kind of thinking that, but I think it just stresses the importance of um, working, even if you only work, I'm trying to do 15 minutes, the old 15 minutes a day, whatever I have time for, make that time. I'm trying to read a little less on social media and more moving my reading habits to Substack, where there's actually signs of intelligent life there for me to read. So I thought, it's time to spend that time because we always think we'll have a ton of it, and then all of a sudden it's overnight. Like that happened in like California. That was so shocking, and it's and I had watched a TV program a couple of weeks ago. It's called Fire Country for anyone who likes Kathy's weird TV habits. And they are about people who fight wilderness fires. They're set somewhere in California, and they were talking about zombie fires. And I'm like, okay, is this something made up for TV? I read an article the other day. In fact, we have zombie fires in Alberta in the mountain area that burnt so badly last year. It's where fires are put out on the surface and they keep burning underground. And then, so it's not, we don't have a big fire right now because it's snowing and very cold out. But as soon as it warms up in the spring, these zombie fires start reemerging. And I'm like, that's really frightening. Like you think, okay, well,
Yeah.
we've had the big fire, everything's gone. We're okay now. It's not going to happen again, but apparently it can happen. So I think it's just another huge reminder for um, how important what we're doing here at Projectkin and in our genealogy community, how important that work is. And I like
Yeah.
the idea of daily observations because all these things going on right now, and as you said, busy week in the news as well, is part of history. And
Exactly.
that's what we're trying to what was history like? I want to know what history was like for my ancestors. But my descendants are going to want to know what was life like in this strange time period
Yeah.
where of rapid technological change. So, but
Yeah.
again, done is better than perfect.
While we're in little pithy statements, not only done is better than perfect, but we are tomorrow's history. And thinking about what history was like for me. Thank you, Lori. That's
Mhm.
a great example. We are heading into some bumpy roads and capturing where we are, what we see, while curating and preserving and protecting where we go is super important. Terrific, Kathy. Welcome to Project Kin. We're delighted to have all of you, and I hope you all appreciate
And, and
your
and such a good
indulging
point
me.
that genealogy will migrate more to Substack too. That a lot of the forums will come here.
I certainly hope so. And I made this statement early on, and I'm pretty much serious about it. I'm a little tentative. I would love to help a genealogy forum, a private group on Substack that really wants, don't just, it's going to be a lot of effort. So I need them to really want to turn, um, to bring that here into Substack. And I personally, whether it's part of Mission Genealogy or Projectkin, I don't know, we'll figure it out, would be happy to help make that happen, obviously for free, because I think we could turn that into a recipe of just how to do this. It's not obvious. There are subtle details. It's not hard, it's just not obvious. And I'd be delighted to help people do that just because, in my humble opinion, it's not about right and wrong. Here, it's about control and ownership of your own stuff. We're all putting things up into the cloud. The cloud itself is not bad, it's just a matter of understanding what things are, creating backups, creating archives, and using the tools to do what the tools do well. And we're too easily confused by it all, and we're all here as a community to take care of each other and encourage each other too. So with that, since we are well beyond our 15 minutes and approaching 30, I want to back it up and leave time to discuss next week. In fact, we have another special guest next week, Jane Hutchin, who is doing the her Forget Me Not program on Tuesday, has graciously offered to join me on the Saturday, or rather the Sunday, her Monday, next weekend, to talk a little bit about the new programs that we have as part of the series, because she's actually announced them. They're up on projectkin.org/. Forget Me
Events.
Not, I think, somewhere up there. And I'd love to tell you all about who else is coming going forward. So, doing these guest things are fun. It's way easier than trying
Yes.
to do it by myself. So, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you all for joining. I can't tell
Anytime.
you how good it feels to know we're not doing this alone. It's a little bit like flying without a net. But what the heck? I'm so
Yep.
glad you found us too, Kathy. That's very sweet of you to say. I know you just signed up. It's a delight. All righty
Welcome,
then.
welcome, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Talk to you soon. This will all be in a recording. I have a call coming up after 3, so I'll
In a
see what I
while.
can do to get it done this afternoon, as soon as possible. Thank you. Good to see you too, Mary. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.
How do I end this? I think I hit the end button. Thank you. Bye.